Hello, everybody, and welcome to part three of the Ireti Saddlebag. My name is Catherine, and I'm the owner and founder of Sew Your Bag. So, before we get started, I'm just going to check to make sure everybody or that everybody can see me and hear me just fine. Um, every now and then things go mute, and I think I'm good. So I'm excited to finish up the bag. I'm excited to um, hopefully make sure that everybody has clear instructions about what we're working on, and it is something that you can come back and look for on the replay. What I will say to you is that if you would like, you can start with the prep first. But if you're comfortable with everything and cutting it out, and you don't need that, by all means, go to video number 2, which was creating the exterior of the bag, which was what we did yesterday. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, I want to make sure that we know which pieces that we're talking about for tonight, and make sure everybody has all of their supplies. So some things we did yesterday, and some things we'll be finishing up today. So today, what we will need, as far as material is concerned, is we will need the short strap, what I'm calling the slider strap in the instructions. And we finished this yesterday. We'll need our adjustable strap. We will need the side gusset piece. So this is not going to be done in pieces like the exterior. It's just one long piece. We will need our front piece, and this is waterproof canvas, and our back piece. We will also need the pieces for our slip pocket. So these were the pieces. So we need a piece of waterproof canvas, and you should also have another piece of fabric that is your exterior fabric, and we're going to create a slip pocket out of that. Additionally, you will need your zipper facing. So this is the zipper facing. This is not interfaced. And then you will need your 2 pocket pieces. So these are going to be the lining for the interior zippered pocket. What I will say to you is that in part 1, I said you did not need to cut them 2 different lengths. We can trim them down. I did cut them per the directions so that they would be exactly the same size as the directions for those people who are following according to the directions. So I'm just going to turn this bag inside out right now so we can see what we're all talking about. And it's a struggle. All right. So this is what we will be constructing today. So we'll be constructing the zipper pocket. We will also be inserting the lining to the zipper. So those are the pieces that I needed. And then you need this piece for the slip pocket. Once we're done with this construction on one side of the bag, we will be ready to add the gusset and then the front and the back pieces. What I will say to you, if you do not want the gusset on the same side as the zipper, you can definitely put it on the front side of the bag. So you can put the zipper on one side and then the slip pocket on the other side if you'd like to do that. So that's a change you can make to your bag. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we will be making our zippered pocket. So the zipper pocket piece, you're going to need your facing and your lining pieces. We're only going to need one of our interior pieces for the back or the front, and the other pieces we can just simply put to the side because we won't need them right now. So we want to mark the center of our lining piece. And as I mentioned, I'm putting this on the back on one piece. When we get to the other piece, which is a slip pocket, we'll talk about that. So I mark my centers by simply folding these pieces in half. And I snip at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, or 1/8 of an inch, which is what, if the seam allowance is here, is what it would be. And I just make a little snip there. And I do it on the top and the bottom. These snips also help me later on when I'm going to be lining up things on the bag. Right. So we're going to lay that face up on the cutting mat. And then what we're going to do is take our zipper facing, and we're going to line that up also on the cutting mat. So this is waterproof canvas. There is no lining on this. If you're using cotton, please remember that for the cotton, you will need to interface your lining pieces. But since this is waterproof canvas, I don't need to do that. So I'm going to place this on here. I'm going to use a little bit of the paper tape that we've been using that I mentioned comes in the box. So where this is actually placed is in the instructions. So I'll just place that on there. And then I will tape it. You can, or you should probably fold this this zipper facing in half as well. Mark the centers, and by doing that, it will help you align it with the top and the bottom. I hope everybody had a wonderful day today. I know this will probably be showing for a little while, and maybe 2 years from now, people will look at it and wonder, but we are in our spring months here in the US, and so the weather's getting a lot nicer. So I just took and lined up my center marks because that's the center, and I'm just going to tape this down. So I am using this paper tape to do that. It should adhere easily. And I'll put a piece on the top and a piece on the bottom. Remember I said yesterday that you can sew this tape, and it was something that was suggested or mentioned by one of my subscribers, Nancy. And I thought it was a great idea, and I put it in the box for this month. So once we have those in place, the next thing what we want to do is we want to measure down from this top edge. We want to measure down and draw a line. So we're going to draw a line, and it's actually just 1 inch. I can tell you that measurement. It's not a secret. And we're going to draw a line. I'm then going to draw down from this line, and I'll show you. I drew a line right here. I'm then going to draw down from that line 1/4 of an inch and draw another line. And then from that second line, I go down another 1/4 of an inch, and I draw another line. So at the end of it, I should have 3 lines. So I'll show you. There are 3 lines on there. There's 1, 2, and 3. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to get our zipper. Now, if you lay your zipper on there, it should be like the full length of this. So just make sure that you lay it on there and make sure you have enough zipper. Pretty much the zipper should go to end to end. If you receive the kit, that's it. It should go from end to end. If it's a little bit shorter, that's okay. What we're going to do now is from each end, we're going to draw a line in. So we're going to come in, and you can do this depending on how long you want your opening to be. You can do this 1 inch, 1/2 inch, whatever you'd like. So I'm going to draw a line 1/2 inch in from both sides. And what I'm really doing is I'm making a rectangle or completing the rectangle. So I'm going to draw another on the other side, the same dimensions, the same size in. And I just need to do it so that I close off the box that I drew. All right. So if we look at it, it should make a rectangle right here. We're going to need to sew along that rectangular line. So we're going to actually sew around the outside of the box. We will not be sewing on this inside line right now. We're just going to sew around the outside. So just keep that in mind. All right, the last thing we're going to do is where we drew that 1/2 inch line, you're going to go in a 1/2 inch more towards your middle and draw another 1/2 inch line. This is going to help us cut later. And I'm going to draw another 1/2 inch line on the other side. So remember, I'm doing it a 1/2 inch, a 1/2 inch, and it should be a total of 1 inch from your edge. So we should have a total of 5 lines, right? We have 1, 2, 3, I'm sorry, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines that we drew. So if you don't have it for the 7 lines, then you should go back and draw the lines. You're going to need all of these lines. So the top and bottom line are going to be for cutting. So I'm sorry, for stitching. So the top and bottom we will be stitching on. The middle line we're going to use for cutting. The ones on the end, the outermost lines on the end, will also be stitched. So we're going to stitch on that line around this box in a rectangle. I think I forgot to mention to you that your fabric should be right side down. So this piece here should be right side facing the right side of your bag lining, the back of your bag lining. So these are right sides together. We're going to stitch this using a stitch length of 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we're going to cut this out. So let's go to the sewing machine. So if anybody has any questions, just let me know. Just type it in the chat. So I'm changing my stitch length to 3. Normally I would be stitching, I would tell you it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance or something like that. In this case, it is not a seam allowance because you're stitching directly on the line that we drew. And once again, it's the outside line that we're stitching on, and we're going to stitch the outside lines and create a rectangle. I do back tack forward and backwards. Take your time if this is the first time that you're sewing and you're not comfortable sewing a straight line. Just take your time. Let the feed dogs on your machine do the work. So let them pull the fabric. You don't have to push it like I've seen some people hold it here. You hold it here to keep it, I guess, straight, but you're not pulling on it. But normally if you just let the feed dogs do the work, it'll be fine. If you do not get to this corner, so if for whatever reason you get really close, but it's going to be more than the stitch length is going to be too long, you can shorten your stitch length to a 2, even a 1, just to get into that corner, and then change it back to the 3. With the needle in the down position, you're going to lift your presser foot. And someone asked a question yesterday because sometimes I get that little catty corner stitch. Make sure that even though your needle is down, it's hard to see, but when I turned my wheel on my machine, it actually went down just a little bit more. You want to make sure the needle is coming up before you actually lift the presser foot and pivot. And that should help you not get that angular or 45-degree angle carry stitch. So I normally count how many stitches it takes to go from one corner to another. You do not have to, but I'm going to stitch down the side. And then I'm going to lift my presser foot once again. Make sure that that needle, it went down just a tad, is on the up, is going up. Lift your presser foot and turn. And for those of you who have, I need one more stitch. For those of you who may have had that issue, give it a try and see how it works and let me know. Okay. So now I'm going to sew this other long side. And when I get to that other corner, needle in the down position, make sure it's on the way up, but it should stay in your fabric. Turn and stitch. Now I do not, everybody's different, I do not start my stitch directly in a corner because it's sometimes harder to meet it back there in the corner. So what I do is I start a little bit over. So I start maybe about a half an inch away from the corner. And then I, when I get to that corner again, I pivot and then I meet the 2 stitches because that's easier. So I don't start in the corners. I know some people do. And then when you get back to the other side, you just cut your thread. So now I'm just going to turn it over so you can see the back of it. You should have a rectangle, and that should be the outer line of your box that you drew. The inside line, there should be no stitches, so it should just be a rectangle. So let's go back to the cutting mat, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next to finish this. So now that we have this in place, we can actually take off our paper tape because we don't need that any longer. I'm going to stick mine to the side. And I had you draw another rectangle. So my zipper is going to be kind of wonky, but it should be the outside. I don't know if you can see that. I made a mistake, but it's okay. It'll be fine. What you're going to do is with that other rectangle that you drew or square that you drew. So over here, there's a square. There's my stitch line, and then there's the other stitch. So on one side, we're going to make a greater than symbol, and the other side, we're going to make a less than. So I'm going to go to one side, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So starting at the corner, so I'm starting at the corner here, I'm going to draw a diagonal line to that center line. So I'm just going to draw a diagonal line to that center line. And then I'm going to start in the other corner, and I'm going to draw a diagonal line to that center line. That should give me what looks like a less than symbol. All right. So I'm going to use a permanent pen. You're not going to see it, but I'm going to use a permanent pen because I want you to be able to see exactly what I'm doing. Okay. So I don't know. Hopefully you can. But right here, there's a line that goes like this, and then there's a line that comes back out to the opposite corner. So that's going to be a less than symbol. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, but the other side will look like a greater than symbol. So both of the points of these lines should meet that middle line that I drew earlier. And these are going to be cut lines. So the way that I cut this is I fold this in half. Just like this. And you know what? This is going to drive me a little crazy that it's off. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to go back and quickly fix this because it's going to drive me crazy. I'm looking at it saying it doesn't matter, but it does. So let me just very quickly fix that on the sewing machine. I sewed to the, when I sewed, I did not sew to the outer part of my rectangle. I sewed to that other line. So I'm just going to fix it and sew to the outer side because it will drive me crazy. I was trying to not pay attention to it, but it's, I'm looking at it and it's going to drive me crazy. Okay. So now what I do in order to be able to cut this is I will take my piece and I will fold it wrong sides together. This part doesn't have to be exact, and my center line is right here. So I need to start it off. I will take my scissor and I will cut a hole right there on the center line. So make sure you cut it on the center line. And then if you open it up, you'll see, I don't know if you see my finger coming through there. You're going to cut the full length of that center line. But when you get to that peak of your symbol, either you're greater than or less than, don't cut all the way to the end. You're going to get right there to where the peak of that symbol is. And I am cutting through both layers. Okay, so I am cutting through back into the lining. And I'm going to cut straight across. Okay, So now what I did is I cut that, but I did not cut to the end. Don't cut to the end. I'm then going to pivot it, and I'm going to cut along one of the legs of my greater than or less than symbol. So I'm going to pivot it and cut. I'm going to get as close to that corner, this corner right here where the stitches are, but do not cut through the stitches. So get as close as you can, but don't cut through the stitches. Because if you cut through the stitches, it'll come out and then you'll have to redo the whole thing again. It's not so bad, just make it shorter. Once you've cut that one, and I've cut that side, I'm going to do the same to this leg. And once again, cut as close as you can to that corner without cutting through the stitches. All right. So then your piece should look like this, right? You have this greater than symbol that's peeking out. You see it's sticking up there. And if I show you on the back, it's maybe a little bit easier to see, but you can see that piece right there sticking up. See how it looks? So that's what it should look like. You're going to do the same to the other side. So I'm just going to cut across here. Once again, when you get to the peak, you're going to stop, or the point of your symbol, you will stop. You will pivot and cut along one of those legs, making sure that you do not cut the stitches in the corner. So get as close as you can. The closer you can get without cutting the stitches, the sharper that your corner will be when we fold this in. Okay. And I'm just gonna, I have a couple of stitches here I need to pull out from before, so I'm just gonna pull them out. So now we have both of those pieces cut. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to take our pocket zipper facing this, and I press it, I fold it up and I press it, and I do that going all the way around. And that's because we need to push it through that hole, but I want it to be very sharp. One of the reasons also I did not interface this is because when you interface it, it gets a little bit stiffer, and I don't need it to be stiff. I just want it to be a piece that when I put my zipper in or in here, you will not see the raw edge. So when I put it in here, you won't see this raw edge of the zipper. So I'm now going to take the fabric and I'm going to tuck it in. But as I tuck it in, I'm going to also fold this piece. So when I'm done, everything should be on the back side of my pocket. So I'm going to pull this in and I'm going to fold it up, and you're going to press down. I'm going to put a piece of, and you can put a piece of double-sided tape on here. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to use paper tape because I need to get this fabric in order to attach my zipper. I want to make sure that I have access to be able to close that up. So pull everything out in towards the back. Tug on your corners slightly over here. Over here, tug on them slightly, but get everything in there on this side. Okay. So now the waterproof canvas is hard. If this was fabric like cotton and cotton, it would be a lot easier. That's why I'm going to add a piece of double-sided tape to help this stay down. If you want, you can put the paper tape on here, and I'll do one side with paper tape and one side with double-sided, because then we can peel off the paper tape. I wasn't going to use it on mine, but I'll show you. So if you take this and you pull it just like this, you can stick a piece of paper tape right there to hold it in place. I'm going to use double-sided tape on the bottom, and you can iron this if you want, but flip it over to the front like this, push it down and iron it, gently iron it from the front a little bit if you want to. But when we're done, it should look like this, where we don't see the actual fabric. Every now and then it'll peek through. It's not the worst thing in life. You know, it's totally fine, but you get it as well as you can on the other side. So see, I stuck that paper tape and it didn't really stay. So I'm going to get my double-sided tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually stick the waterproof canvas to the waterproof canvas. So I'm putting it right underneath the row of stitches. And I'm going to make it stick. So this is a little fiddly. I'm going to be honest with you. It is a little fiddly. You can definitely, you know, cut a hole and not do all of this and just put the zipper on the back side. But this looks a lot neater. So once I do that, I'm just going to press this down just like that. And then I will add a couple of clips just to hold it in place. So you can see I put the double-sided tape in it. It stays a lot better. And then I'm just going to add a couple of clips to keep that in place. You can put it on the fabric as well. The only thing I will say is keep it, I'll show you, keep it down because we're going to have to peel that back. So see, it keeps it down. And this is, and we talked about this before with the double-sided tape that sometimes it doesn't stick, or I'm sorry, with the paper tape or double-sided tape may not stick the way you want. So it's definitely trial and error. It's something that you know, you'll come up with your own way that makes you happy, but there are options. So now this side, I'm going to put another piece of double-sided tape as well. You can see that it is sticking on that side. I added the clips. Like I said, I'm adding the double-sided tape right here under the stitches because I want this piece to stick to that piece. So I will show you that as well. All right. So now what I'm going to do is just stick one end, stick that down. And then I add the clips because sometimes it's not strong enough to hold it in place. And I don't want it to pop up before I have a chance to sew on it. So I'm going to take clips and I'm just going to add them in there. And because I'm sewing this from the front, I'm putting the flat side to the lining side because when I sew the zipper in, I'm going to be sewing it from this side. So the next thing that I need to do is get these corners over here. Right, so we want to pull these as well as we can, just like that. So I'm pulling down and out because I'm trying to get the rectangle to be as square as possible. Right, so I'm going to stick another piece of double-sided tape under there. And I just need a small piece. I don't need a very large piece. I just need a little small piece to hold it down. And we can always go back and remove this. It's not, you know, double-sided tape is not permanent. It's just tacking it in there. And then this one I'm going to pull as well. So I'm going to pull down and out. And I'm just going to press this a little bit with my fingers. And then I'm going to add a piece of double-sided tape. And once I do that, I'm going to peel this back. And then I'm going to press this down. So I do that again. I pull out just like that. Okay. So now we have everything secured, or more or less secured. If you need to, you may stick a clip in the corners over here. But if I turn it over, that's what it should look like. So there should be an opening that you can see through. I've pushed all of this back. Yes, you can come over here and clean this up a little bit and pull and tug. Like I said, with cotton, it's a lot easier. If you have the Hera marker that came in your founding member, you got one of these, you can use this to help you flatten it or press it down. So if I wanted to, I could take my Hera marker from the front and I can do like this, which helps create a better crease in this. You can use the back of a pair of scissors. You know, waterproof canvas is pretty sturdy, so you can push down hard on it. If it was cotton, you could definitely iron it so it was flat With this, you can come back with an iron. Don't let it rest on there, but lightly iron it. If you iron it, you will notice that this becomes a little bit more pliable and there's more drape, but when it cools off, it'll get back to its regular draping. So that's an option. Do not iron this on the back. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our zipper. So one of my subscribers mentioned the way the zipper opens and closes. And I thought it was interesting on one of our other bags because I open my zipper this way. So whenever I write the directions, I write them based on the fact that I hate to say it, most people are right-handed, right? Because you're making this bag, which is what's nice about making a bag yourself, is if you're left-handed or if you have a customer who's left-handed and they prefer the zipper to open from this way. So in other words, I'm opening it with my left hand and not my right hand, right? You can flip the zipper around during the creation of the bag or the putting together of bag. So I normally in the directions will write it where the zipper opens going to the right and closes going to the left. But whichever way you want it for that customer, you can then put the zipper in. The one thing I will say to you is if you have a customer who's left-handed and you're putting it over here because they open it with their left hand, they do this, make sure if there's a top zipper, you do the same thing. So you need to turn it around for them as well, that top zipper, so that you don't have one opening left and one opening right, unless that's what you want to do. So what I will do in this case is I will now take my zipper and I need to put my zipper in that window opening just like this. Right? To do that, I'm going to just remove these clips only because it makes it easier for you guys to see it. You can use double-sided tape or you can use the paper tape. Once again, I'm going to use the paper tape just so that we see different methods. The directions have you put a piece of double-sided tape on both the top. So you'll put double-sided tape over here, and then you'll peel it back. And you'll expose your zipper through the window the way you want it to be, and then you'll press down. I will use the paper tape since we're doing a live, just to show you a different way of doing it. Okay? So once you place it in there, and it is pretty much in there, you can tape it from the back if you would like. But when you tape it from the back, what will happen is things will shift. So I'm going to tape it from the front. And then I'll go look on the back just to make sure everything's good. So this is where I want it. I'm going to take my paper tape. And I'm going to tape it from the front. So I'm going to tape it from the front and the back. So I'm just going to add a piece of paper tape right here. Make sure you grab that zipper, because if you just lay it on top and it doesn't grab the zipper will shift. And I'm just going to line this up, make sure it's straight. Something I also normally do is I will iron my zipper to get the wrinkles out of it. And I'll show you a piece of zipper tape to show you. So then I'll just do this like this. Right. And let me show you a piece of zipper, what I'm talking about. So sometimes when you get a piece of zipper, I don't know if you can see that, it's bowed a little bit. So I will take an iron and I will iron this on this side and this side. Stay away from your teeth. You don't want them to melt. But I just iron this to get it as smooth as possible. And then I put the zipper in. So now this is your zipper and your pull. Keep in mind that your pull is going to create a little bubble. So what happens is your zipper goes higher and lower around that zipper pull. So if I move the zipper pull back or forward, you can see the little bubble went away. I'm going to now take this and I'm going to just flip it to the back now that I have it in there. And I'm going to put some more tape on the back of it, but now I don't have to worry that it's going to shift. So I'm just holding it and I'm putting it like this. So now I'm going to add another piece of paper tape on the back just to make sure we're very, very secure here. Like I said, the directions tell you to use double-sided tape, but if you don't, you can always use paper tape. I've also seen people and they put little dabs of glue. All right, so I know that that's in there now. right? So I did it on the front, I did it on the back. But I've seen people where they take beacon glue and they put like little dots of glue over here and then they stick it down. You can also use a glue stick. So you just need something to temporarily keep it in place when you put the zipper in. So these are all things that, and they're inexpensive. You don't need, and it's not expensive. Like I said, go to Staples, grab it, especially at school time, back to school, just grab a couple of glue sticks. They have them in the bigger containers and you can get they're really inexpensive. So now what I'm going to do is I have this in here. The next thing I need to do, because I don't want to add this yet, and I don't want to sew around it. The next thing I'm going to need to do is take one of my zipper pieces, one of my pocket pieces, and I need to add it to this. So I'm doing it kind of a different way. There's an easier way. I should say it's not easier. There's a different way of doing it. I'm just showing you other ways of doing the same thing. So when I turn this over, what you will notice is when I lay this on here, this piece will be longer than this piece when I lay it on, right? So one piece will be bigger. So I'm going to take, in this case, the shorter piece, the longer piece. Let's see. Yeah. I'm going to take this longer piece and I'm going to lay it at the very edge here of my zipper. So I'm going to lay it at the edge of the zipper. It should be the full length of your facing. And I'm going to add another piece of tape. In this case, I will use the paper tape because that's what I've been using. You can use a double-sided tape. So you put the double-sided tape on the very edge of this. Since I've been using paper tape, I'm going to continue to use paper tape. Okay, so I'm just going to tape that down. Once again, the fabric or the material should be right on the edge of that zipper. So you're going to tape that in place. Make sure you tape it in at least 2 or 3 places. So I taped it over there. I want to make sure I get the edge because I hate to have my pocket shift while I was sewing. So you can either put one piece or just, tape it in at least 2 or 3 places, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it to the front and I'm going to sew a line across the top here, just one line across the top. You should go one extra stitch over the edge of the box. So go one stitch over, and that's because when we put the bottom on, we're going to sew a U shape right here, and it should match that one stitch. So we're going to start in one of those stitches and we're going to go all the way around and then come back up. So we're going to start at least one stitch over and we're going to sew around. So let's go to the sewing machine and do that so that you can see. All right. So your piece should be flat. I'm going to start at least one stitch and I'm going to use the edge of my zipper opening as my guide. So right in here, the edge of my zipper opening will be my guide, and I will sew along that zipper opening, which will be about 1/8 of an inch. If it's easier for you, you can do the bottom first and then come back to the top. It's the same, but all right. So I'm going to just tucking this in here a little bit. All right. So let's start stitching. I'm not going to back stitch in case you want to rip out a stitch or two, but I'm just going to stitch using that as a guide. I am also, I don't know if you can see it, but it is pushing my zipper. So the zipper is actually keeping me in place as well. Over here, it's keeping me in place. When you get to your zipper pull or near your zipper pull that zipper out of the way. If you can't get it back past your presser foot, make sure your needle's down, lift the presser foot, and slide the zipper all the way out of the way. So if you can't get it past that zipper, then just move it out of the way. So I'm going to go one stitch over. So that's my corner. And I'm going to just go one stitch over, just like that. Okay. And I will back tack here. Right. So now if you look at this piece, what you will see is you will see that I have stitched along the top and I've gone about one stitch over. So once I get to the corner, I go one stitch over. I can now remove this paper tape because the zipper top is already in there. So we're going to go back to the cutting mat and we'll look at the other piece. That comes off very nicely. I'm going to take the pieces that are on the back off as well because I don't need those. It doesn't matter if there's tape under there, as long you won't be able to see it. So whatever tape you see, you can remove. But just taking that off. All right. All right. So this is the top, the longer piece. If I look in my if I look in here, I can see that piece. So the next thing I want to do is I want to attach the bottom piece. So I'm just going to close that zipper up a little bit. And I want to attach that bottom part of my pocket, right? Because I only have one, which is the top, which is this piece. I want to attach the bottom piece. So I'm going to fold this piece up and out of the way. I can remove this tape because I don't really need it anymore. That was a staying tape to keep the zipper in place. But since I've stitched it, I don't need that tape anymore. So I can rip that off. All right. I'm then going to rotate my piece so that the bottom piece, so this top piece is on the bottom. So I'm just turning it around. Just like that. I'm next going to take this shorter piece, and it doesn't really, I mean, if you care about what it looks like, what I will say to you is if you're using directional fabric, you want to make sure when you look in the pocket, everything's facing up, right? So there's sometimes you have fabric where there's like characters on it or things like that. You want to make sure when you put this on here and you open this pocket and look in, those should be right side up. They should be facing up. They should not be facing down because then it'll be upside down. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece. Make sure this is up and out of the way. If you fold it down, when you attach this piece, you will be closing your pocket. You'll be sewing your pocket closed. So now I'm going to put this face down or right side down. So it's right side to wrong side or right side to right side of the zipper facing. I'm aligning these edges. I'm aligning the edge of that zipper just like that. And that's where I'm going to tape it in place right there. Okay. I'm going to use double-sided tape. You can use the paper tape like you did before, but I'm just going to use some double-sided tape and stick it on there. So these are meant to hold it in place while you sew. Waterproof canvas, I will tell you, is very difficult to stick a pin through. So I will tell you it's very hard. So now I'm going to press that down. I'm going to turn it over to the front. I'm going to take a look at my zipper right here. Make sure everything looks really nice. And it does. Both of these pieces should be at the top. Do not put any of the, don't put these pieces down because when you stitch across here, if your pockets are here, you're closing up your pocket. So we put it up to the top so we don't close up our pocket. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew a U. So we're going to start at this end point. We're going to sew down the side, across the bottom, and back up to the other side where I started before. If you didn't get that one extra stitch over, not to worry. When you get here, just pivot and then just back stitch right up here in the corner. So if you didn't get that one extra stitch, that's totally fine. Just pivot. I did not back stitch over here in case I went too far over. I could then always just pull out one stitch, pull the thread down to the back and get rid of that. So now I'm going to stitch down, which is a U, from this corner down across the bottom once again and back up at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure, like we did before, we move that zipper out of the way when we get to it. So let's go to the sewing machine. Once again, make sure that your pockets are up. They're not down. If they're down, you're going to sew it closed and you're not going to be happy with yourself. All right. So I'm going to put this needle right down in that corner stitch. So right where that last stitch was, I'm going to drop my needle down in there. I'm going to go forward and back, so I will back tack here. And by the way, your stitch length is at a 3. I didn't mention that before. When you get to the bottom of that, and take your time, this is a nylon zipper, but take your time, because if you hit it just wrong, believe me, it will break your needle. So I'm just checking to make sure. I just want to make sure I go at least past that. And then needle in the down position. Once again, make sure your needle is going in the up position before you pivot so that you don't get that extra hanging piece. And then I'm just going to sew along the bottom. When I get to my zipper pull, I'm going to pull it back out of the way. And then to make sure that it's back in the way, I lift and I pull again. If you have to lift your presser foot, make sure your needle's in the down position, and then you can move it back if it doesn't get past your presser foot. Okay. Okay. Lift and pivot. I'm not far enough over. I'm too close, so I'm just going to go back. And once again, you can adjust by half a stitch if you want. You can readjust it and then, come back in. So now I'm going to get to the top here. I'm back tacking. That's what I was doing. I cut my thread. So then I have completed my rectangle around my zipper. Right? I've completed the rectangle. When I open it, I should be able to stick my hand into that zipper. If you can't stick it in, that's because you didn't fold the fabric up, as I mentioned before. Okay, so before we leave here, the next thing we want to do is we want to close up this zipper. So to close up the zipper, right? So we have that there, we have that there. When I open it, I should be able to see, like I said, I should be able to stick my hand in there. It's very important that that's open. If this is not open, we won't be able to turn our bag right side out when we're done. Okay. You can also see in here, you cannot see the raw edge of the zipper. So now I'm going to sew this. And this is already sewn. So all I'm going to do is sew down the side, across the bottom. But when you sew across the bottom, you don't want to sew it in a way that you close it up. I just go in like maybe 2 or 3 stitches, and then I do the same on this side, 2 or 3 stitches. So I'm going to fold this down. I actually have some extra fabric here. So I will flip it to the front and I will cut this because I don't need all of that. All right, so now my zipper is even. I'm going to stitch down this side, go in like 2 or 3 stitches, stitch down that side, go in 2 or 3 stitches, and then leave a very big opening right here. I do this from the front, so what I do is I peel back that side piece, and then I will just use a 1/4 of an inch should be fine on the side, and I stitch through it. I do get the zipper again, so and when you get to about a 1/4 of an inch from the bottom, you just pivot your piece and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maybe, but just a little bit. And it just makes it easy when we turn it later on if you do that. And then I'm just going to slide right across to the other side and do the same thing. In the pattern, I tell you, there's actually markings I have you make to leave that opening. It should be pretty big. It should be about maybe 6 inches or so, because you want to be able to fit, like I said, the bag through it. And if it's smaller, you may have some challenges. Make sure that you back tack in this corner here where I started, and also when I ended. The reason is because when you're pulling things through the bag, you want to make sure that you don't pop stitches and undo all the work that you did. And I'm just going to go back up here. I'm trying to fold. I should have flipped it over. So I'm folding the pocket out of the way. But I should have flipped it over like I did on the other side. Okay. And then your pocket is done. Once again, just open your zipper. Make sure you can stick your hand in there. All right, make sure you get your hand in there. And you can do whatever it is that you need to do when it's time to turn things around. All right. We're going to set this to the side right now, and we're going to do our slip pocket. The slip pocket will be a lot easier, I promise you. So with the slip pocket, we're just going to, and we will curve these edges in the directions I told you which pieces to curve. We'll curve these also because they need to fit nicely. But with the slip pocket, all you're going to do is get your lining fabric, which in this case is the black waterproof canvas, and you're going to get your exterior fabric, which is the purple. We're going to put them right sides together. One will be longer than the other. And we're going to clip them in place, just like this. We're going to sew along this edge. You don't need to sew the other edges yet. Just sew along this top edge at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm not going to flip back and forth. I'm just going to go and sew that. And then I'll flip back and forth later. It is a stitch length of 3, and you're going to back tack. Hope that wasn't too much shaking. So I'm going to flip this open now, and I'm going to press it just like that. But when I flip it back to the front, you'll see that it's a lot shorter. What you need to do is you need to pull this piece down until the bottoms meet. So the bottoms and the corners meet. And I'm going to clip that in place. Just like this. And the reason that it was made longer is to create a little accent piece at the top. So now when you press it down, you should have an accent piece at the top. I'm just going to give this a little crease using my heron marker to do that. And I'm going to give it a little crease. So you've sort of created this little faux border on the top of your piece. We're now going to sew on the exterior fabric over here using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance away from that seam. If you need to, you can sew it at 1/4 of an inch. It's up to you. It's your own comfort level with sewing. Lots of practice here and get sewing straight lines. So let's go back to the sewing machine. Because this is a top stitch, I am going to change my stitch length to between a 4 and a 4.5. The 1/8 of an inch, I'm sewing from a different direction now, but for me, it's the inside right here. I am sewing on this exterior fabric, not on the black, the waterproof canvas. Something else I should mention is that in here, I'm just going to unclip it for a minute. I folded the seam allowance down towards the bottom. So I folded it down towards the bottom. So really what I'm trying to do is lock that seam allowance in place. Also, it gives a neater finish if you do this. And I back tack at the start and the stop. Okay. So now I used purple thread, which is what came in the kit, in the box. Purple thread, but you can see on the back is orange thread because I didn't change my bobbin. But you should make them the same. You can make one purple and one black if that's what you want to do for this project, whatever you want to do. But that is the thread, or the top stitching, I should say. Okay, so now what we're going to need to do is we're going to cut these corners. So we didn't cut the corners because when we put it on our piece here, those corners are cut. And I'll just flip it over so you can see. See, the corners are cut. So you have an option here. You can take your piece, okay, lay it on top of here and cut the corners. I'm going to make it easy on myself. I'm just going to align the bottoms and align the sides. So I'm going to do this because it is the full width. I'm going to align the bottom. So I'm going to add a clip here. I'm going to align the sides. And then I'm just going to grab my rotary cutter and I'm going to cut it. One thing you want to do before you do that is just very quickly measure that you have the same distance from the top of the pocket to the top. If you have to adjust it down a little bit, then you can do that, but you should measure it just to make sure that you have the same distance because you don't want to have a crooked pocket in there. Okay. So now I will flip this over and I'm just going to use the curve from the other piece, for my lining piece to cut that curve. So now this is where you can determine, I'm going to put the pocket on the same side as the zipper pocket. If you want to, you can take your other piece. So you can grab this piece and put the slip pocket on this piece. So if you want to put it on two opposite sides, you can take this off and you can have one a zippered pocket and one a slip pocket. It's up to you. The pattern, I put it on the same size. The reason I do that is because the weight will be against your body. If you put them on opposite sides and for some reason you put more in the back than you put you put more in the front than you put in the zipper pocket, it'll pull your bag forward. So it's not evenly weighted. So that's the only reason I do it. Okay. So now, once again, you need to grab that pocket and flip it up. If you do not flip this pocket up, what will happen is you will have your pocket once again sewn closed. And I sewed that strange. This is not you, this is me. I sewed it when I didn't flip it over. I sewed it. I sewed this to this. That's why I should have flipped this over. Okay. All right. So flip this up, because what we'll be doing is we will be sewing a line down the middle here. And if you don't flip it up and this is down, you're going to sew your pocket. So make sure that you flip this up out of the way. If you're doing this on the other side, like you're actually installing this piece, this slip pocket on the other side of your bag lining, you don't have to worry about that because there is nothing to flip up. Okay. So now what we're going to do is you're going to measure from here to the center, and the directions tell you how to do that. If you want to, now is also a time when you can make a decision about how many pieces or how many pockets you want to make your slip pocket. So you can make, one small one on this side and then a big one. You can make it maybe not make it even. So you may not want 2 equal sizes, but you may want 3 equal sizes. Totally up to you. Do it the way you want and the way that fits your needs. If you're going to do something like a pocket because you want to put a pen in there, for example, right? So I want to put a pen in there. I'm going to have a seam allowance at the bottom here of 1/4 inch. If you put a pen in there, it can get lost in there if you don't clip it to the edge. So if you're going to do something like put a pen or a lipstick, measure it out, right? Measure it out. And then say, okay, well, if I put a pen, and maybe not this one, this is pretty long, but if I put a standard pen in there, I want it to always be like this, right? Do your lines going down, and then right where you want to put your pen, let's say this is a pen, do another row of stitches here. Nobody's going to see it inside your bag, I'm telling you. So do the lines first, because you want to connect the 2 lines and you want to make a rectangle. And then do a row of stitches here so that your pen will always go to this point and stop. It won't go all the way down to the bottom of the bag. And that's because this is a pretty deep pocket. I'm just going to do 2 equal pieces. I'm going to use this as my center line because it is the center line. And I can use that black as a center line. I'm going to stitch. I'm going to go up, and then I'm going to tack at the top. When I do this, the way that I do it is I'm going to start right here where my 1/8 inch stitches are, and I'm going to stitch up to the top. So I'm not going to back stitch. I'm just going to straight stitch up to the top. When I get to the top, I'm going to turn my bag around this way, and then I'm going to stitch back over those lines and stitch down. That's how I'm going to back stitch. So that's how I'm going to tack this down. It works better if you do it that way. I do also go a little bit over so that when I get onto this right here, and I'll show you when I do that, just because I don't want any lift at the edge here. If you stay right at the edge, this can tend to lift, and over time it'll wear. So I do go about 1 stitch over to lock it down, and then I go back. So I'll show you when I get to this sewing machine what I mean. Okay. So I'm going to put my piece in just like this. And it's upside down. Remember to have that pocket lining away from the bottom. Don't leave it at the bottom because you'll end up having sewing your pocket. So flip it up towards the top. I'm starting right here, on my exterior fabric somewhere, and I'm going to sew forward. So I'm going to sew forward. I'm going to rotate and sew back. So I'm not back stitching. One of the reasons I do it also is to make sure that they're all in alignment. I've tried to back stitch, or I've done back stitching before and it was a little off. So this way it works out better. I change my stitch length down to 3. I'm going to stitch forward. I go 1 stitch over, so that's 1 stitch over. I lift my presser foot with the needle down. I turn it all the way around so you can see my stitches right there. All right. All the way around, drop this, and I stitch back over those stitches. And that way I know I've also gotten over the stitches and it's not, all wonky. And then I just stitch straight down the center. You should draw lines with a removable marking tool like a chalk liner, a heat erasable marker, something, if you want to make sure that your lines are all even. So I give you the dimensions on where to draw that line in the directions. Okay. So now if we look at this, you can see that I've done that center line. I'm also going to tack along the edges here. So I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch all the way around, just to make sure, like I said, I don't lose anything when I'm putting my bag together. So I'm going to turn it up to 6 because I just need a basting stitch to hold it down. It's about 3 layers of fabric here, so I don't want to leave anything behind when I'm sewing it together. Okay, so now we have our piece ready to go. Just want to cut some of these threads off because this is polyester thread. I was looking for my of a lighter. You can actually burn the threads to get them a little bit shorter, which I'll do later, because it's a polyester thread. So I can feel this under here. This was a piece that I didn't, like I said, I didn't flip over. So when I stitched it, I didn't stitch it correctly. But okay, great. Once again, before you do anything else, open your pocket, stick your hand in there, make sure it comes out the bottom, make sure you did not flip it to the top, and make sure that it comes, it's good and you can get your hand in there. Okay. So the next thing we will do is we will need this piece, which is our front, unless you put your slip pocket on there, and we will need our gusset. So for the gusset piece, I remember I said this is one piece. When we did our exterior, our gusset piece was in 3 pieces. The lining piece is just one piece. So I'm going to fold this in half, and I want to mark the center because I want to align it with the center of my pocket, my lining. So I'm going to mark the center in the front and the center in the back. Now this will be a little bit different because on the gusset piece that we did before, we actually made a mark. When we do it for this piece, we're not making any marks. We're just going to ease it around the corner, and it's simple if you just follow along. So the first thing we're going to do is taking our piece, our lining piece with our zipper, we're going to take our gusset piece. We're going to align the center with the center here. And I actually snipped it, but it's my stitch lines. But if you need to, you can fold this in half just like this. And snip just like this. All right, and then you have a center mark. So we're going to align this. It's going to be right sides together. So it's the right side of your gusset with the right side of your back or front. In this case, the back. We're going to align those marks, the center marks. And then we're going to align the tops. All right, so we align that. We're then going to align the tops. So we're going to take this. We're going to align it at the top here and clip it in place. align it along the sides and clip it in place. And what you'll notice is if I go back to the bottom and clip it in place, it'll gently curve around. Now I'm going to stitch it from the top, so I make sure that my clips are facing up and the flat side is facing down. And if you bend this in, you should be able to clip the corner as well. So just take your time with this, you can do it. All right, and I'm just laying this flat. When you lay it flat, you can then push this out towards the corner and it'll create that curve for you. So once again, clip in the center. We clipped in the center, clip the top, clipped like halfway between the corner. And then when I get to the corner, I just bend this down like that and I just push it out, and it actually allows me to, if you see that, get to that corner. We're going to do this side as well. So we're going to clip this to the top. Add a couple more clips. So I'm adding it at the bottom, like halfway between here and there. Halfway between there and there. Once again, if I fold this in, it makes like a rounded corner. I can clip it right there. And then I can clip the sides. So just, play with it until you get it. You want to make sure you're all the way out there to the corner, because when you stitch, you don't want to leave any fabric behind. All right, so then that's what it should look like, minus this piece of thread. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sew around the entire piece, starting at the top all the way around the piece. Take your time on the curves. Once again, with the curves, make sure that if you have to take your stitch length down a little bit just to put smaller stitches in there or hand crank, there's nothing wrong with that. And go around the entire piece all the way up to the top. I'm going to be using a stitch length of 3. So I'm going to turn my stitch length back down to 3 and sew this on. You shouldn't be anywhere near your pocket, but if you want, you can flip the pocket out of the way, but you should not be near your pocket. Your pocket should be out of the way anyway. I'm going to back tack at the top. So up here, I'm going to back tack. So I'm going to stitch forward a couple of stitches, back. Stitch length is at 3. I don't remove the clips until I get there or I'm close. And then you can hold this down. You can use a stiletto. I was looking for my stiletto tool, but if it's easy, you can use a stiletto tool to hold this in place. Don't put your fingers in the way, but hold it in place, which is good. And then you can also then stitch that way. So I'm using the end of my scissors to do it, just to keep my fingers out of the way. Don't worry that it's folded. When you fold it out, nobody's going to see that, and it's going to straighten out once you open up the bag. And I'll show you that. But once again, you can take smaller stitches if you need to around that corner. And like I mentioned before, you don't have to lift your work up to pull the clips out. If you just push on the back end and pull to your right or your left, wherever you're sewing, the clip will slide out. That's the reason that I had you put the flat side down towards the sewing machine and not facing up. If the round side is facing up like this and you're sewing, it's hard to get them out of there. Okay. And take your time. See, I'm taking my time. I'm not, whipping around those corners. And this is also why I had you, actually had you based in this, because there's 3 other layers under there, and it's very, very easy to not catch one of them. and I'm going to back this just to start and stop. Okay. So I'm just going to check to make sure everything is caught in here, and it is. And then let's go back and see how it looks. So this is how your piece should look now. All right. If you flip this out like this and you push it out, you can see that it's a nice rounded corner. I'm really, really pushing it. Like I said, nobody's going to see it's black in there. Nobody's going to see your corners. And then this one, I push it out. Okay. So that's what it'll look like on the inside of your bag. We're going to now attach the front part. And we're almost there, guys, believe it or not. And we're going to attach this the same way that we attached that. All right. So we're going to mark a center on this piece. I mark top and bottom because I use the top line, the top center line later on to align the bag exterior with the bag lining. So that's why I mark the top and bottom. I know that I'm not going to have to worry about the alignment on the side, so I don't worry that much about that. Okay. This is facing right side up. We're going to match those center marks. Okay. Remember, know which side you're going to sew from. I'm going to be sewing not from this side. That's why the flat. I'm going to be sewing it, I believe, from this side. We'll know when I get there, but I'm going to be sewing it from this side, coming all the way around. So now I'm going to match the top as well, the top corner. And then I'm going to mark halfway or clip halfway in between the bottom, and then I'll match up those corners. I'm trying to remember how I sewed this. Yeah, okay. I'm going to flip mine around. I'm going to sew it the other way. Okay, so then you're going to match up the corners. I flipped it over so I could see where the corner was, but you're going to match up the corner and stick a clip in it. It's hard to mark on the waterproof canvas because it's so dark, but if you have a lighter piece of fabric, you can definitely use your little piece and mark the corner center point, which may help you with your side pieces or your gusset pieces. But the dimensions are exact, so it should work out pretty well. And then I'm going to take this side as well, and I'm going to clip the top. I've already clipped the center from earlier, so I'm going to clip the top down the side, just like that. And you can see I'm not skimpy with my clips. I use them. So use as many as you need to get it on there. All right. So now everything is clipped in place. It's up to you how you want to sew it. If you want to sew it from this side, you want to sew it this way. I think it's probably easier if you sew it this way because you can move the pieces out of the way. So we're going to sew it this way and come all the way around. We're going to start at one corner. We're going to come all the way around to the other corner. And make sure to move the clips out of the way as you get to them. I'm still using a stitch length of 3. and I'm backpacking it to start and stop. I don't know if the camera's shaking. I apologize because it's mounted to the same table that I'm sewing on. The camera's mounted, so I'll have to change that the next time I do a video. See, I forgot when I got one upside down. Like I said, this is easier with cotton than waterproof canvas, but you can still do it. With waterproof canvas, you can still do it. It just takes a little bit more fiddling around. Okay. And just like that, we're done. So the next thing that we have to do is put the front and the back together. Right? So we want to put the front with the back, or the lining piece with the exterior piece. And we have to put them together. So we have our zipper, double checking that we can open it. We can get our hand in there, right? So we want to make sure that that zipper is actually open. So we want to put it in the open position. We should be able to see the cutting mat or the cutting surface or something. And we want to put this together with this. So the way that we do that is we have to put one inside the other. We're going to do what's known as birthing the bag. For those of you who've been around a while, you know what that means. For those of you who haven't, it's just simply putting the bag together, sewing it, and then pulling it through an opening like you're birthing a child. So that's why it's called birthing a bag. And in this case, we're going to pull the bag through that opening in the pocket. So in order to do that, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to turn, we can't do it this way, right? We can't stick it in this way. So we need to turn one piece inside out and the other piece right side out. So I take my exterior, I'll fold down my flap, and I turn that inside out. And that's because it's easier to push the flap down. So I put this inside out. Just like that. I then take my flap and I fold that in, right? Because we can't sew it with the flap up. If you install the flap the way that I mentioned yesterday, you should have at least a 1/2 inch and the top and the bottom. We're only going to use 1/4 inch of that 1/2 inch. Okay. Now, we need to stick this piece. This is still wrong side out. We need to stick one piece inside of the other piece so that when we pull it, it comes out. So if I did this right, I always do this wrong, but okay. Yeah, okay. So we're going to take this piece also, and we're going to turn it right side out. So one's right side out, the other one's wrong side out. Wrong side out for your exterior, right side out for your lining. So there's a right and a wrong to this. So if you remember that, then you'll get it. I'm actually going to come back, I think, and take apart this bag because I don't, the orange thread is not making me happy. Okay. I mean, the thread is nice for demonstration purposes, but for the bag itself, it's not. So I'm going to take it apart. Okay. So now what we're going to do is one is wrong side out and one is right side out. This pocket needs to be on the back. So what I'm going to do is looking into the bag, because it needs to be on the back side, I'm going to put it this way. So on the front where there's nothing, that should be on the front where you have your closure. Right? This is going to be on the back, so I have to start with it on the back. Once again, wrong side out for the exterior, right side out for the lining. I'm going to match up those center marks. So I'm just going to match the center marks just like this. When I get to the corner, I'm not going to open them. I'm just going to push one in one direction and one in the other. So I'm going to do what's known as nesting them. So one seam allowance will go left and one will go right. It doesn't really matter which. But snug them up against each other so you get a nice finish. We're going to do the same with the other side. It may be a little bit tricky because remember you have your flap. But let's do it with the other corner. And I'm just doing the corners and the main pieces, and then I'm going to come back. Match your other center mark with the center mark on your back. And then the corners we're going to nest again. So we're going to nest those again. For me, the nesting works better than to open up the seam allowance on both of them and try to get them to line up. If you nest them, for me, it works better. It's definitely trial and error. If you're a quilter or you've sewn before, some people will open the seam on this side and that side, and they will, do it with an open seam to open seam. I nest them. I find that for me, it comes out cleaner, and more often than not, they come out perfectly aligned. Okay. Now I have all the main pieces, right? I have the centers marked and I have the corners. Now I can go back and add extra clips. So I'm going to add a couple in between my main pieces just to make sure that I don't have to fiddle too much when I get to the sewing machine. This will be stitched in with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once again, your foam is shorter, so that should help you know where that 1/4 inch is. All right. If your sewing machine has an arm which it can come out, and it's one that they use for sleeves, then you can remove that because now this will go around. Mine doesn't. Mine is a flatbed, so it will not remove. So what I will need to do, is I will need to actually sew my bag from the inside. So I will be sewing my bag from the inside here. If you have the, the arm that releases and you can sew it and move the bag around, you can do that. It's a pretty pliable bag. Just take your time and do that. So let me go to the sewing machine and sew up the top of this bag. Remember to remove the clips as you come to them. Just going to very quickly switch my clips around here. It'll just make it less frustrating for me as I try to get these clips out. All right, so doesn't matter where you start sewing this together, front, back, it doesn't really matter when you sew. So I'm just going to start I guess this is my front. I'm just going to start in my front. Stitch length of 3. If you think it's too thick, you can go to a 3.5. I'm going to back tack at the beginning and at the the beginning and at the end. I'm just going to go forward. I'm going to go kind of slow, try not to rattle that camera that I realize now is rattling. My camera is very close to my sewing machine, so I think what I'm going to do is just move it back a little bit. Hopefully, you guys, it's not so bad. So just check all the way around to make sure you didn't leave. Like over here, I got it kind of close, so I'm going to go back over there. But make sure you got all of your pieces sewn in and that you don't have anything that potentially could be a hole later on. And I'm just going to go back here and sew because I went off course. All right, so now it comes time to birth that bag. So let's turn this around. Oops. Right. So I just want to adjust the lighting on this sewing machine just because when I go back, you won't be able to see it. So hopefully we can get that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to birth this bag and we're going to turn it right side out because we're going to need to add our hardware. And all right. Just getting the sewing machine. Make sure it's properly lit in such a way that you guys hopefully should be able to see it better. Okay. Hey, what, Whitney? Yeah, you made it for the final step. You saved the best for last, Whitney. You saved the best for last. So now what we're going to do is we're going to reach our hand into that pocket. You should have unzipped it when I told you to unzip it earlier. If you didn't, no worries. You can actually fiddle with it to get it open. If you have to, open a couple of stitches right here in the back. Stick your hand in, unzip it, and then just resew this piece. So if you forgot to open it, then do that. I normally pull my lining out first. I pull the lining out. And then I reach in it to get a corner, and I poke that corner in. So if you poke both of the corners in, grab them. So I got a fistful of corner right here, and push down on the bag. Now it's going to take a little bit of manipulating. Remember I said to you that when you stitch the bottom, make sure you back tack, just so you don't rip that. But you can twist it and you can turn it any way you need to get it done to pull it out. And I just keep pushing the bag this way and pushing and feeding it in on itself so then I can get it out. Normally I would put this against my body, but if I do that, you won't be able to see me do it. So, because we've used foam in here, it will take some work, but it's not so bad, believe me. A lot of people have been away. I think because of the holidays, or it's just that time of year where people go away. It was also a spring break. So I totally get it, Whitney. I totally get it. I know that I think Susan was away for Passover, and then I forget somebody else was away for Easter. So I understand. I appreciate you making it, tonight, though. Okay, we're almost there. I should put like a countdown clock on or something so you can see how long it takes me to do this. And once you've done this, you'll realize when I said to leave a really big opening in there, you'll understand why, because the smaller it is, the more difficult it is. And if you didn't make a big enough opening, please feel free to open that pocket all the way. Don't think that you have to squeeze it through there. If it's frustrating, just rip that open, and when we come back later on, you could just sew it up. Nobody's going to notice. All right, I'm almost there. It's coming. There we go. So now what I do is I actually stick my hand in here and I poke out my corners of my bag before I stick my lining back in there. You can do it the other way around if you want. And then I just take my lining and I shove my lining back in there. And once your lining in there, if you stick your hand in that pocket, you could actually grab the bottom of your lining and pull it down to help you. Stick both of your hands in like this and snap your bag out on the sides, and that'll also help to get the sides out. All right. So now we have this done. I'm going to zip up my zipper pocket, flatten it out. But now you have your bag done. There's only a couple more things to do, right? We have to top stitch around this entire top. So what we need to do is fold. I'm folding in the waterproof canvas or the lining towards the inside. You can pull down on the inside to make it happen. I'm going to clip once I fold it down. I'm just going to put some clips here on the side, and I'm actually going to clip all the way around. So normally I would turn my bag inside out because of my sewing machine, but I'm just going to sew it from the outside. It'll be a little bit more challenging, but I'll get it done. I want to show you how to top stitch. It'll have that ugly orange thread on the inside, but I'll come back later on and fix that. Okay, so here we go. So you should not be able to see the waterproof canvas on the outside if you roll it on the inside. So if you roll it to the inside, you should not be able to see it on the outside. Okay. And then once we're done, we're going to put our hardware in for our flap, and then we're going to do the sides. So now what you're going to do is go back to the sewing machine, and you're going to sew around here using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you're not comfortable with the 1/8, you can do 1/4 of an inch. What I will tell you is when you get to the back, and I'm going to actually start at the back so I don't mess myself up, make sure that your flap is out of the way. So if you need to take your paper tape and just temporarily tape it down so you know it's out of the way, then do that. We're not going to sew over the flap because remember I created that little sort of that very shallow pocket in the back. So we're just going to sew around this. I normally start at a seam. So I normally start in the corner over here, not in the front, but in the back corner. If you want, you can start back here. Wherever it's more comfortable for you to start, that's where you should start. I'm going to go kind of slow because, like I said, I'm not going to be sewing this from the inside because I don't want that orange thread on the outside. Okay, so let's go to our sewing machine, sew around. It is a top stitch, so we're going to change our stitch length to a 4. And let me just see if I can zoom my camera. For some reason it's because I know I'm going to need to be able to get in there. There's no way I'm going to be able to sew this with the camera like right there. So let's see if I can zoom me out a little bit and see how I do. See how I do with the zoomy zooms. And is that too bright for you guys? Maybe too bright. See if that works better. I know it's a little bright in here. It's actually getting to be nighttime. So hopefully that's a little bit better. Let's see. I can't turn off the light too much because then I won't be able to see what I'm sewing. All right, so I'm going to sew the hard way. The hard way. Check your bobbin, guys. I'm telling you that, and I'm hoping I have enough to do mine. Flap should be out of the way. So make sure that flap is out of the way. I'm going to start over here in the center back. And like I said, if you're not comfortable doing a 1/8 of an inch, feel free to do a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. It doesn't, you know, it's not going to matter. It's just a top stitching. It should be a stitch length of 4. When you go over that, the seams, take your time. You don't want to break a needle. So take your time going over those seams, those side seams. And do any adjustment you need to do with your needle in the down position. Do not lift your needle up and do an adjust, your Don't lift your presser foot up and do an adjustment. Make sure your needle's in the down position if you have to lift that presser foot. You can, if you'd like to do 2 rows of stitching, you can. I only ever do 1. But if you're somebody who likes 2 rows, feel free to do 2 rows. Like I said, if you have a free arm, take off that free arm and rotate your bag around. That was me. I yanked my bag forward. I shouldn't have done that. I pulled against the motion of the needle set, so I made that funny sound. Okay, and we're done. So let's take a look. You'll see my ugly orange thread on the inside of my bag. I don't know if you can see it. It's on there. Cut your threads. We're going to go back and later on you're going to go back and you're going to seal up your pocket. That'll be the last step we do. I always leave the pocket open until the end, and I think the reason I do that is in case I have to get back in the bag or I notice a seam is not right. I can then just, if I'm feeling around here, there's no seam that's right, I can always go back into the pocket. If I seal the pocket up right as I do it, if I find anything wrong, it's harder to, then I have to rip out the pocket and redo. All right. So now what we need to do is we're going to make little, like at the corners here, we're going to fold it in on itself just like this. And you don't have to go up as high as this bump, but between where the seam allowance is and down, I have you sew in every corner, and I need you to push in that waterproof canvas so that it's flat. I have you sew a 2-inch seam at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, only because a 1/4 inch is easier to do. So I'm sorry, I hear a dog. So I'm going to take a marking tool that I can erase or heat erase. Actually, let me take a pencil, and I'm just going to make a mark. I don't know what I do with my pen. Okay. No worries. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to make a mark about 2 inches down. And I'm going to do that on every corner, and that's to give the top some shape. All right. So what I will do is I will sew down this way. If the top is too thick, you don't have to go all the way to the top. Start underneath wherever you think is the lumpiest part of it and go down 2 inches and backstitch, and do that on all the corners. So I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and do it, and then I'll come back and show you. I won't switch cameras. I'll just very quickly do it. And this is to give the corners, like I said, a boxed, the sides a boxy kind of look. You can, if you'd like to, stick a rivet in it. So you can do that as well, just to be more decorative, and if it's easier and you have a rivet, a way to install the rivets. I would definitely not try to do it at 1/8 of an inch. So for anybody who says, can I do it at 1/8 of an inch? I wouldn't recommend it. It's just very thick and very fiddly. So just, be easy on yourself. And I'm doing this before I put in the hardware. So if you notice, everything that I'm doing is happening before I put in the last bit of the hardware, and it's just a way to protect the hardware so it doesn't get scratched. And just going to get a couple of corners here. I just have two more guys, and then we'll install our hardware. Two more little corners here. If you ever have thick seams that you can't get it, something thick, you can always take a hammer, a regular household hammer, and you can hammer it. I would tell you to cover your material. So take a piece of cloth or whatever and cover your material before you hammer it, because you don't want any dirt from your hammer transferring to your work. I know it's weird. It's like out of body. Somebody's talking at you. I thought this would be quicker than it is, but okay. So it's kind of messy. Like I said, I'll redo it. But all I did was sew from here about 2 inches down. You can probably see the orange thread on the back. And I'm going to take this out later, but you can see I sewed from here down. So I do that on all the corners just to give it, I don't know if you can see it, it gives it a more boxy look to the bag. And that's why I do it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our straps. So these are the straps. You're going to need to try on your bag or fit the bag to whoever it is that you're making it for, so they know where it's going to be comfortable, because this will be a faux strap. It's not going to be fully adjustable. We're going to seal it in so that it stays fixed, but it looks like it's an adjustable strap even though it's not. So we're going to remove the screws on this side. So I'm going to get a piece of foam and a piece of tissue. One to protect my hardware, and the other to put my Loctite on. So that's my Loctite, and I just need to get a tissue. Yes, you can use glue. Yes, you can use crazy glue, beacon glue, if you want to. I know there's people who use that. I just use the Loctite. So I'm gonna install my strap so that it's on this side of my bag. You can install it so it's on the other side. So if you put it on you, like if you hold this up against your body on, let's say, the left-hand side, if you want to see this, because it's on the it's on your right-hand side, then you can put this to the front. If you don't want to see this and it's on the right-hand side, you would put it on the back over here. And then the other strap piece is the one you'd see, and vice versa, right? So I call it auditioning. Audition the bag and see how do you want to see the hardware. So I'm going to put this on the right hand, on this side of the bag. So I'm going to take out those screws. I don't know where my little screwdriver is, but if you got the box, you got a little screwdriver. But I'll just use this one. The foam just helps to protect my hardware because I have to turn it upside down. Now this piece of hardware has 2 plates. I mean, it has 1 plate. So once you take it out, there's a plate right here, and there's, get it out. There we go. Okay. So there's a plate, and then there's this piece here, and I don't know if you should be able to see right there. It has little posts. We're going to put holes in the side of our bag. I know, scary, right? We're going to put holes in the side of the bag. These posts should go through the hole, and then we're going to put the plate on the back like this. and then we're going to put the screws back in. So that's the steps that we're going to take. Because the piece that we're using is going to go on the outside here, like this, right? I want to make sure that it lines up perfectly. So I'm going to punch the hole. I'm going to mark the holes over here and punch the holes from the front. If you punch them from the back, they could be a little bit off. So I'm going to punch them from the front. So you take your plate and you lay it over, and it's hard to see, but you take your plate and you lay it over. Let's see if I can get you guys a little bit more light. Sun's going down. That's why I keep saying that, because it's almost 8 o'clock here. So the sun actually went down. And I just want to make sure that you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. All right, so hopefully that's better. And then I'll just give you a little bit more light, and that should be a lot better now. Okay. So these holes here that are on the piece, here, here, and here, are the ones that I need to mark. I'm going to put this flush with the top here, because if you look at this piece, there's actually a piece right here. So these two will lock together like this. Make sure that this piece is not too far down, because you'll have a gap. Make sure it's flush with the top over here. So what you're going to do now is you'll make a mark. And let's see if this will work. Okay, so I'm going to make a mark in here. This is a silver pen for leather. Hopefully it will work. Yep, okay. So I see that I have a mark here, I have a mark here, and I have a mark here. So I have 3 marks. That's where my plate is going to go. Yeah, okay. So that I don't lose my screws, I'm just going to move them ever so slightly out of the way over here. Okay. Now, in the kit, everybody got one of these. If you don't have the kit, you just need something to punch the holes with. So this is a leather punch. I'm just going to fold my flap down for a second. And I'm going to lay my piece as flat as I can against my cutting mat. So I can still see, you may not be able to see, but I can still see my 3 little holes here. With this tool, you grab it in your fist like this. You put your thumb here, and we're going to push down. So we're going to line it up. And in the kit, there should be different sizes. I think it's the 3rd biggest one. So Whitney, is it still very bright? Do you need me to turn down the light a little bit? I'm looking at it on my phone, and it looks bright, but not too bright. But hopefully it's like I connected it to my phone so I could see what's happening. Okay, it's good. Okay, thanks. All right. So like I mentioned, with this tool, you grab it in your fist and you push down. So you pump it back up and down. So I'm going to put it over my holes, one of my holes, and I'm just going to push down. And if you pump it like 2 or 3 times, it should make a hole. I don't know if mine is, this one isn't the one that was in the kit, by the way. This one I've had for a while. So the one in the kit should be very sharp. There we go. Okay. So now I made that hole. And a couple more pumps. I'm just sticking a screwdriver in there, and see, it makes a hole. All right. Oops. I made a hole. So that's one hole. So I'm going to do the same for the other 2. And honestly, these tips come off. If you just unscrew them, they come off. And I think this one has fabric in it. So I'm just going to take the fabric out. Okay. All right. There goes the fabric. And we have one more right here. If you have a punch, you know, and you have a hand punch, you can use that as well. It's also my angle. So now I have 3 holes. So I have 1 down here, 2, and 3. So now what you do is you take your plate and you take your post. So the post from this piece here, those posts should fit in those holes that we just created. So we want to stick the posts through those holes. So I'm just pushing, I'm lining them up and I'm pushing them down so they align with the holes. So 1, 2, and this one's 3. This one has some fabric covering it, so I'm just going to cut that fabric away. It's there, it's just that the fabric didn't punch all the way through, so I'm just going to clip that off the way. All right. So like I said, the plate itself that unscrews is what you're going to use as your template of where your hole should be. Okay. There we go. So I have 1, I have 2, and I have 3 right here. All right. So I'm going to grab my screws. Stick me some Loctite on there. You're going to need your plate because you're going to put your plate over this. So the lip of this, which is why I told you to put this, align it to the top. Absolutely, it's a workout. So birthing the bag and installing hardware is a workout. It most definitely is. I know that even with a punch, like a hand punch or a, you know, if you have one punch, you have a press and you have a punch for that. You got to really push down on it. It's like you're working your muscles. So I put the plate, I don't know if you probably may not be able to see, but I put the plate over it and I lined it where the actual holes are. So now I can take my screws and I can stick them right in there. Now, remember I said yesterday, if the screw doesn't go in, don't force it because you don't want to strip the head of the screw. So just make sure that, there it goes, it snapped. You just make sure it's aligned in such a way that it'll go in. And then you just screw it all the way down. What's nice is that those posts come up through the bag so you don't have to fiddle around and wonder where they are on the underside of the bag. And I didn't get this one in. I thought I had, but it shifted. So this is going to be the hard part. Some was easy. The hard part is this. It shifted down just a little bit and I couldn't get it. And there are days you get it and it's totally perfect. And then there's days that it just, it's going to be that one thing that makes your bag, that particular bag, like Whitney says, an exercise workout. Okay, so I got that one. If you want, you can sometimes I half screw all the screws and then I go back in and tighten them later, just so that there's the same, they're evenly in there. So a little bit of, this is blue and I'm not trying to get blue on any of the fabric, so I'm the Loctite. So once you screw it in there and you go in as tight as you can, you hand tighten it. And then it should be on there. All right, so it should be on. your bag. I pulled it, it's on the bag. It's even because I used the plate on the front. If you put it on the back, like I said, it may be left or right, but by doing it on the front. So that's the first part of it. So guess what? We get to do that all over again for the second part of our strap, for this part of our strap. So one more time, we're going to unscrew these screws. And the screwdriver I've had forever, it's like magnetic. So this is the screwdriver that I use for mostly everything. I don't, I know there are the electric ones, the ones that are like battery operated. For me, I don't like that. Those, I used to use them, and then I stripped more screws than anything else, and I stopped using them. I'm like, I'll just have to suffer through they definitely make life easier, but I just stripped the heads of screws. And when I got the hardware, it didn't come with extra screws, so I couldn't afford to strip it. So now that we're going to separate that, we're going to go to the opposite side of our bag, which is this side of our bag. We're going to align the flat side. There's a flat, and then there's a part that has curved. It's the flat end. We're going to align it here. If it's easier for you, you can also take a clip and just clip it to hold it if you need that third hand. And then I'm just marking it. So this is, like I said, this is a silver pen for leather. But use whatever you need to. You're not going to see it. So if you have to use a permanent red marker, like a Sharpie, you can do that as well. All right, so now I've marked that. Lay your bag as flat as you can against your surface, because you want the holes to be straight. That's why I keep saying lay it flat, because when you punch those holes, you want those holes to be straight. So let me just take, if you don't lay it flat, they'll be off center, and then you won't be able to get the post through, and you'll be wondering why. Okay, so I did that so hard that the light went down. All right, so 1 second. All right, so now we should have those holes punched through. That one's not. This one's not. It's not. A little bit more. Like I said, I had this for a while, and they do get dull. Those nibs do get dull on the end. All right, so now I know that I can see they went through. Just making sure all these holes are open. And then we're going to put the other piece on as well. Okay. Grab your foam. You're going to grab your other strap, and we're going to poke those posts through the holes again. So we're going to line them up with the holes we just created and poke them through the holes. I'm just flipping this over right now. I'm not doing anything special. Squishing this bag out of the way. And then I just want to make sure those posts come through, so I'm going to use my screwdriver and make sure that I need to see the posts where I need to put the screws in. So that's all I'm doing, is putting the fabric in such a way I can see the posts. Like I said, sometimes it's, if it doesn't work out, which I think this is a little bit why it's a little bit shifted, you just have to play with it till you get it. And this is why also I didn't attach that strap to the other piece, to the slider yet, because I wanted to make sure that I had mobility so I can move it around out of the way. So this particular hole over here, I'm just going to cut it. It's open, it's just that I can't see because of the fabric. So I'm just going to cut in here so I can get the fabric out of that hole. It's completely open, I just can't see. So I'm just poking my very sharp tool in there, my scissors, and we're going to do this. Okay. It's like Murphy's Law. You're down to the wire and then something goes wrong, right? Okay. So I think we're good. Okay. So now I'm going to take my plate. I'm going to lay over my holes. Hopefully. And I'm going to start adding my screws back. Hopefully I got it. Okay. And so we're going to get those in there. Like I said, just sometimes when you do it and you punch the hole, the fabric will stay in there. So I just had to stick something in. I could go back and repunch it to get the fabric out. This one is an old one, an old punch. I could even punch them a little bit bigger because there is some wiggle room on the sides over here. So I could have even punched them even bigger. I just punched them exactly the same size. So then that piece is on. Almost there, guys. Almost there, I promise. So before we do the last part of sewing, I'm going to attach the front piece to this lock. So the way that I do that is I'm going to take the actual lock, and this is, like I said before, all this is like afterthought hardware. I call it afterthought because you put it on after you've done everything else. And I'm going to take the other part of the lock. It does have a screw on it, so I'm going to take that screw out. And this one actually only has one screw for some reason. I don't know why, but there are two holes. We're going to slide this on. We're going to fold our bag forward, and we're going to, and once again, this is another case of auditioning the hardware. I'm going to put it on, and I'm going to look at my bag, and I'm going to say, does that look good? I'm going to stand it up and look back at it and say, does it look like it's in a good position? Once you have it in the position that you want it to be in, you can then put the screws back in. So I'm just going to add the screw back in. There's actually two that should be in this. I only, for some reason, I only have one on this particular one. But I'm just putting some Loctite on here. Very carefully, very, very, very carefully. Once you have it positioned, press it down and slide it up because that's your position right there. All right, so you're just going to slide that up because that's where you want it. If you want, you can take a marking tool, like an erasable one, like a chalk liner or something, and you can mark the edges. Just mark around here so you know where it is, and you don't have to be as careful as I'm being. And, you know, just slide it up. But if you hold it, it's there. So that's where I want it to be. So I'm going to reinstall the screw that I took out. There should be another one. I'll add the other one later. But for some reason, this one only had one. And you just screw it down. So once you put the other one on, and like I said, you go down, it locks in on the other side, so it can only go as a certain amount. And then that part is done. All right. So 2 more steps. The next thing you want to do is audition your bag in such a way that you know how long you want the strap to be on your body. So everybody is different. So what you're going to do is take the strap. If you have challenges with this, just take off the strap end. Don't drive yourself crazy, and put it back on when you're done. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold this in at like a 45-degree angle. I'm going to then slide it in. Make sure your strap is straight. So make sure it's straight. Folded it like a 45-degree angle. Slide it into the top, and it should go in no problem. Pull your strap, fold it again, 45-degree angle, slide it in, and you have your strap. Okay. Now this is where you're going to audition the bag. So you're going to put it against your body and see, or whoever the person is, and see how long they want the strap. In the picture, I made it very long because I wanted everybody to see what it looked like. But you can make it as long or as short as you want it to be. Some people like it sitting underneath their arm, like in the crook of their arm. So once you found the length, so let's say this is a length that I liked and that was comfortable. It's pretty short, and that's the length I have, and it's comfortable. What you're going to do is go back to the sewing machine, and you're going to sew a line of stitches, and you're actually going to use this as your guide. So you're going to sew a line of stitches right next to this. All right, so I'm going to sew that, and I sew it at like a 3.5 maybe, and I just go back and forth, and I use this as my edge guide. So I'll show you how I do that. And if you're using the same color thread, you won't even notice it. Nobody's that close. So I'm using the edge of this as my guide, because I could say you do 1/4 inch, but then you'll be like, what's 1/4 inch? Just use the edge. And I'm going to sew this at, like I said, at 3.5. And I'm just going to sew forward and backwards. And take your time because it is thick. I do go a little bit over, and then I backstitch. But once again, because of thickness, take your time. All right. And then what will happen is you'll sew the row of stitches, and then what will happen is you should be able to push the strap down like that, and it'll cover the row of stitches so you won't even see the stitches. All right. And then that is your bag. Just make sure that you go inside and you now close up. Once you've checked all your seams and everything's perfect, go inside, grab that lining that we didn't sew up earlier. You're going to grab this lining. I actually poke this corner out first so I can get a nice clean edge. Fold this under about 1/4 inch, because that's what your seam allowance is on the front and the back. You're going to just fold it under just like that. Line those folded edges together and clip. Once again, if you poke out the corners, it makes it easier. Fold it under. It naturally goes that way anyway. And you're just going to clip them going across. Once you've done that, you're going to go back to your sewing machine, and using about a 1/8 inch seam allowance, just sew that straight across to close up your pocket. Once your pocket is closed up, you tuck it back into your bag. So once you sew that in, you're going to tuck it back into your bag like this, because you're going to sew it, tuck it back into your bag. Everything should be attached. And that's your bag. So I hope that you've enjoyed this making of this bag. It was a lot of pieces. I thank everybody for hanging in there with me. If you're watching this on replay, please put a hashtag or put the word replay in here so then I know. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I am on Instagram under Sew Your Bag, or you can send me a private message. The pattern is available on my website at sewyourbag.com, and I will put all the information related to the hardware, the waterproof canvas, and the pattern, where you can find it along with the fabric, in the show notes below. So thank you guys so much. It's been a wonderful 3 days that I've spent with you all. some of you because you're just catching this one video, but it has been 3 days. The sun's going down, but I have had a wonderful time doing this and showing you how to make this bag. I hope that this has helped you to up some of your bag making skills, and I hope that you will try to use some of the skills you've learned with this bag in other bags that you make going forward. Have a great evening and see you soon.